welcome to another fantastic episode of Because Football. This is your host, Coach Andrew, and today our guest is calling to us from Siem Reap, Cambodia, home to one of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites of Angkor Wat. We've got Charlie Pomroy, the owner and head coach of Angkor City FC of the Cambodian Second Division. Charlie, welcome to the podcast.
Delighted to be here. Delighted to be here. It's going to be good.
Yeah, very happy to have you here. And we've had a lot of, stop and go scheduling things and some short conversations now that the real deal is happening. And looking forward to that. So obviously today you're in Siem Reap and have been in Cambodia for over a decade at this point. But I want to kind of rewind the clock a little bit. And could you tell us about some of your earliest experiences of this game of football?
Obviously, it's a game that's shaped my life. I remember my first real memory is being taken to the park by my mum just to join one of the local football teams and scoring a goal on my first ever training session. And I remember after that day, I was at my granddad's house and I remember him asking me, "So you're going to be a professional football player?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, you're going to be a Tottenham fan." And that was it. That's kind of my first sort of real memory. Is like my granddad telling me, "Right, you're a Tottenham fan." And okay, go and be a professional football player. And that was kind of what spurred me on, I guess, in the beginning. He didn't tell me at the time that he'd cursed me to a life of almost success,
Small
almost
details,
getting
right?
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember that's what would be my first memory. And I remember my first ever game at Pear Tree Park in Stevenage, getting beat 5-0 by a team called Bedwell Rangers. But they were a year older than us. We were all 6, 7 years old, and they were 8, 9 years old, and we played on a full-size man's pitch. This council park, a horrible wet Saturday morning, and just picking the ball out of the net. Like, I was a defender. I was actually put as a defender, and conceding 5 goals, and it was a horrible day. But yeah, it was.
But you're
great
still
memories
hooked,
to look
right?
back on.
Of
course. Yeah, it's mad when you think like we were playing on a full-size man's pitch. Like it was so funny. Years and years later, like 18, 19, when I played men's football with my dad, like I played for his local Sunday league team, same place, Pear Tree Park, same pitch. I made my debut for his team and scored the winner that day. Like they put me up front, and I scored the winner that day. And it was, again, just madness. Like when you think of it like that, it's. Yeah, pretty crazy.
So one thing that sticks out about that answer, Charlie, is your earliest memory just being like scoring a goal, right? Something that it's just so simple. It's like this thing that some person or a bunch of people just kind of decided that this is going to be the object of this thing that you do, that literally like the goal or the outcome that you're trying to do. And it's such a simple thing, just kicking to a certain area and trying to get it there. And it's like, when you really step back, it's so stupid and like basic and silly, but it means like so much. And it's cool that like you can still remember that. I still like, I can remember snapshots of like plays when I was 7 or 8 years old. Like I can remember scoring goals as 7, 8 year old, and that those memories are like still embedded. It helps that as I got older, I scored less and less goals. So there was less to pick from in the memory bank, certainly. But it's just really amazing that connection.
I went the other way. I started scoring more goals. I started scoring more goals as I got older. So I spent all of my childhood years being a defender, and then when I went into sort of men's football and just started playing for fun, like for some reason I could just put the ball in the back of the net. Like it's that, like you said, for me. But I've always just found it a simple thing. Like the Khmers who I work with sort of every day, they call me Harry Kane. And like, because I go in like the last 5 minutes of training. I do not move. I'm not going to run. I tell them like smart players make other people do the running. Like you guys run, put the ball at my feet, and I'll put it in the net. Like they hate me for it, but it's a fun thing. It's a fun thing, and like you said, I get goosebumps thinking about it. Like scoring a goal, there's not many better feelings. you know?
Absolutely. I just played my first small sided game or just any football in a couple years, like 2 weeks ago, and got one or two, and just yeah, you get that feeling, and it's it's just
Yeah, it doesn't
indescribable.
matter
It
where it
always
is.
hooks us. Yeah,
Yeah, of
and
course it does.
so
Yeah.
from then from Pear Tree Park, now we're in whatever the name of your local stadium is here in CM Reap. Like, could you give us a little snapshot of all the twists and turns in that journey, and kind of how you came to this point today?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think like any football fan growing up, just wanted to play football. I wanted to be a professional football player, and I dedicated all of my childhood. My mum and dad spent lots of money and time and sacrificed a lot for me to try and achieve that. And I had lots of success as a child. Like again, everyone has their own version of success, but from the age of 10 to 16, I was traveling all over the world representing England schools and things like this, and played in tournaments in the US and Denmark and Sweden and Italy, and played against some great sides. I played against Real Madrid as a youth team, Roma, to name a couple. But I think at 16, I realized that it wasn't going to happen at this point. And this was around that era where the Premier League was really changing. It'd gone from that old fashioned English game to, it's becoming more developed, and sports science was getting involved, and diet. And, coaches were really just looking at players' physicality more than anything, and as a 16-year-old, I was tall, spotty and skinny, and just wasn't good enough. Like I felt hard done by at the time, but I think when I became a coach, I wouldn't have picked me. I wouldn't have picked me as a player. I'd have looked at me and said, right, this guy can talk, he can organize, but I wanted to play as a sweeper, like an old school Franz Beckenbauer type sweeper, where I
Mm,
just behind everything, make everybody else do what I wanted them to do, and then if they got in trouble, I would go and help them. It's probably more common now. It's like coming into the game a little bit more now, but I never liked to be one on one with an attacker and things like this. And so at that time, um, born a decade too early or too late, would say. But as soon as I got into coaching, it was just an easy road. Like I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I had a great mentor in Darren Saul, who is, I think he's at Yeovil. Last I heard, I think he's the head coach at Yeovil. Last I heard, and he just taught me a lot, so much at a very young age. And I achieved my licenses very, very young. So I think I was like 22, 23 when I achieved those, and then the opportunity just came to sort of leave England. I just didn't feel like I wanted to be involved in the game in England. Um, I just thought there was more out there. Like because I traveled so much when I was a teenager, I
mhm.
knew that I loved being abroad. I loved being in other countries. I loved meeting different people from different places, and I just knew that football was a universal language that could be taken
100%.
anywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
So I knew that in my back pocket, I had my coaching licenses. I had this love for the game, and I could take that anywhere. But I could also, I could be in India and working in a bar and having a completely different life at this point. Like I like that option. I like not waking up some days and not knowing what was going to happen. And then, then one day landed in Cambodia, like 2012. Landed in Siem Reap, and the job was for a local NGO, and the idea was that I would deliver football programs in NGO schools, and then at the weekend they would all come together and playing a junior soccer league.
Okay.
And yeah, it was a very easy job for me at the time because it was just basic community coaching, and then organizing a league that worked every week was also very, very simple. And we were just getting over 1,000 kids every week, that were playing in their schools. And it was the one thing in this town that brought all the NGOs together. Every Sunday, they were all out there, from kids from age 6 to 18, boys and girls, playing every single week. And then I started. So the young coaches I had with me, like one of them, Sapol, who I started the football club with. He and I used to play this game. We were like, I said, we had these two boys from this school, these two boys from this school, that goalkeeper over there. That would be a good five-a-side team. And then it became an 11-a-side team. And then one day we just said, let's do it. Let's invite them to a training session and see how it goes. And then I put Sapol in that team as well. So they were all young lads, like maybe 15, 16. And then there
Okay.
was Sapol. And so no, I think they were about 13, 14, because Sapol was only 18 at the time. So yeah, he was like the captain in the middle of the pitch. And then he had these 14, 15-year-olds around him. And we just killed it, like just started killing everybody locally. Um, and yeah, it just sort of blossomed from there.
So you kind of had more of that foundation in more of the community side of the game, right? And I know that's something you and I have talked about it. Although I'm sure you're always checking for the Tottenham results and catching the highlights, and you can't argue with just like the quality of play and the athleticism and just the ridiculous things that players are achieving and making it look normal and regular on a weekend in the Premier League or any of your
Yeah,
top leagues in Europe, South America. But you and I kind of shared this connection over like the way that football brings communities together and can operate more personally and more intimately. So how did that? What did you see other than just like being able to bring the kids together every weekend in the schools? Like, what do you think were some of the ripple effects of that type of program and how it affected the local community within Siem Reap?
but I think obviously at the time, especially in Cambodia, obviously I hate to sort of pull on the string, but it was a third world country, so there's a lot of poverty around, and young kids have a tough life here. It's a tough life. Obviously, it's improved massively over the 11 years that I've been here. But in those early years, it was, you'd look around, you'd be like, this is hard work for a kid who's 8, 9 years old. But on a Sunday, all barefooted, they'd pick up a football and it all washed away. It was 200 kids playing all at the same time, and all you can hear is screams and happiness and laughter, and there's another 400 kids watching the games and cheering, and then there's all these. It was just this amazing feeling where you could close your eyes and all you can hear is people happy, and
Mm.
that always kind of stuck with me. It felt great, being able to give someone an escape from what was a very, very tough
Yeah.
life. Um, Now, I sort of always remember, even growing up myself, like I had a great childhood. My parents are wonderful people, and but we're a working class family, and so we've had to. I remember having tough days and tough weeks, and even but just cycling to football training on a Tuesday and a Thursday, or it didn't matter what was happening at home or at school or anything. Like that was always just that's the 90 minutes was just nothing else mattered. And I remember my mum used it to motivate me, and that's what I started to do here. So parents were always concerned that their kids should be studying rather than
Hmm.
playing sport, which is a waste of time. And obviously, long term, yeah, of course, education is more important. But what I used to sort of say to parents was, if you're smart about it, you use it to motivate your child. If they don't
Sure.
hit if they don't hit these grades and they don't behave, or these, then you take football away and then watch them improve because they love this thing so much. You know, um, Use it to motivate them, like my mum did me. Like it was the worst thing. Anytime I was stepping out of line, I had a tour coming up at Easter, and I was going to Italy for a week, and if I stepped out of line at school, mum would be like, "Listen, one more of them, and you won't be going." And that was it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was
That's
like,
all
okay,
that
well,
need to be said. Yeah.
yeah, I got to shut up. Stop being a cocky so and so. Like I've got to shut up. I want to go to Italy. And obviously, again, it's not completely the same, but yeah, a lot of those similarities in that sense, like using this game to motivate young people to do good, it's a safe place for people to express themselves. Sometimes like people would rather talk with their coach or with their friends at football
Yeah.
rather than their brother or sister or their
Hmm.
parents, and you find
A
that,
little
there's
safer,
sometimes
a
a
little
scare.
less pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little less judgment. Yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously I think as my time has grown, like I've worked with lots of fantastic organizations who use sport for good and sport for development. It's become quite a big industry now. But I remember sort of back in 2013 when I met a guy called Brian and Nick, two guys, Brian and Nick, who were the founders of Coaches Across Continents, and they just blew me away with what they were doing, where they were, using this game to teach kids about sexual health and things like this. It again blew my mind that there was this whole other way of using this game to teach purposeful play and education outside the classroom, and just the work they did was amazing. And yeah, it just again you've kind of I like you already alluded to. I love football, and I'm in awe of Man City and Guardiola and even Tottenham, and that level's just incredible. You can't help but admire it, but that level's less than 1%.
Yeah.
And there are 6 billion people on the planet, 7 billion people on the planet. Half of them play football. Half of those people want to play professionally, and the that that level is so minute. So the rest of us have to find a way to
Hmm.
utilize this game, and community and bringing people together and education is the best way to do that, I think.
Yeah, and it shows just how versatile the game can be, right? Of impacting people in different ways, purely entertainment, development, like teaching life skills. It's
Yeah.
really just it is so versatile and has so many different uses. And so you started within the schools and the community, and then told a little bit about how you wanted to get a little more competitive and get some of these players are kind of scouting and picking some of the top players. And so then could you tell us how about like how you graduated from working just within the schools to then developing like your own club and doing some similar type of community development yourself that is eventually turned into what you have now as Angkor City and a fully professional club?
So yeah, I think it was back in 2016. We hooked up with a company called Forza Football, who are based in Sweden. They have a live score app, which is Forza Football, and again, just an incredible company whose mission is basically to bring football to everybody. That's their mission. They love this game, and they they believe, again, similar to us, in that the top level of it, that is what it is. But there are people that don't have the same access to it, and their idea is to make sure that everybody has access to it. And so they funded us building an academy, and the idea was obviously just to provide kids with free football after school.
Hmm.
So and I mean, it's still going now. So 7 years later, every day we open up the fields and kids come after school and they just play for free. The fields are there. We have coaches there. The equipment's there, and they just, there's 3 pitches. They set themselves up some days, and again, we kind of let them run it. In that sense, like some days they want to be coached, some days they don't, some days they just want to play. So we just let them play, like whatever. Um, but yeah, Forza were amazing in that sense. So we set up like the Forza Academy, um, and so the next step at the time, it's a difficult one because they're one and the same, if that makes sense. The same people but two different projects. The next step at the time kind of took a bit of a back seat, and we just had the men's senior team. But any of those quality players from the academy, we would sort of throw in to the men's team, and they were just playing sort of provincial football at weekends. But the academy team started to get really, really good and started to themselves, like, because we had this one core group who were all around the same age, and they started winning provincial cups. So we won it sort of 3 years on the bounce. And then the opportunity had come with the changeover of people that run the league here. So it used to be a company called CNCC, and then there's a new company now called CPL, Cambodia Premier League. So they were new, and they had a spot open. They had a spot open for a professional team, and we were offered it. It was one of those decisions where we knew we weren't ready. I knew that I only had, 20 lads all under the age of 18 who weren't ready for men's football. But given the way that football here was going and developing, we would never have had this opportunity ever again. So we jumped at it, and learned some very hard lessons along the way. Been tough, but no, I mean, obviously we'll come to that a little bit later. I think the academy was the best time of our lives, like the best time I've had in Cambodia. Developing young players has always been what I've wanted to do. I've always been better working with young players. I like myself as a coach more when I'm working at youth level. Like with men's football, I've just, as much as I love it, I love the challenge. I'm just disillusioned by it. You know what I mean? Like I cannot stand men not hitting the level they can hit. It just frustrates the life out of me. Whereas younger kids and young men, or young men and women, you allow that. You kind of let yourself allow them to make those mistakes. And I feel like I'm a better coach with young people like that. Whereas at that level, even here in Cambodia, like it's nowhere near the level it should be or could be. But I'm so hard on them because I'm so upset that they don't look after their bodies. They don't switch to brown rice instead of white rice. You know what I mean? Like such a simple thing that they could do themselves, but they won't do it. And that for me, I hate. Like even my wife, bless her, she hates me as a head coach of a professional team. She's watched it 2 or 3 times, and she hates it. She's like just a different person because every day I'm at my laptop and I'm like, right, we do this.
It's a different goal, right? You have a different. You're measured by a different system of metrics. You have to win. You have to get points, and there's more involved. And I wanted to step back a little bit because you mentioned something about the opportunity that you had as a club to go professional because there's a bit of a transition in the governance and the organization of the top league and really the top 2 or 3 leagues in Cambodia. And I know a little bit about it just from researching and being interested myself, but could you kind of explain a little bit of how that operates within Cambodia and maybe like the general big picture, like macroeconomics of, where is that money coming from? What are some of those revenue streams like, and just give a quick snapshot of like what professional football looks like as a structure and organization as a business currently in Cambodia.
Yeah. I mean, I'll start on a very, very positive note in that in the 11 years I've been here, the Football Federation have done incredible work, like to change the image of the game. Because back then, Cambodia had a reputation of games being fixed, and football just had this image of men at a football field playing for money, drinking beer, and that very kind of old school chauvinistic image, which is a lot of the reason why parents didn't want their sons playing it, and their daughters were not allowed anywhere near a football field. So the federation have done a lot of work to change that, and especially in the last 5 years, with when we won the Southeast Asia Games, the Prime Minister he made it an adamant thing that football was going to be the one sport we wanted to really excel in. So for the last 5 years, 6 years, what's his name? Honda became the head coach. So it was a big profile guy. A marketing stroke of genius. From a development point of view, we can talk later. But you know what I mean? Like, yeah, they did not hit their targets in terms of what they wanted to achieve on the football pitch. But
And for everyone
from a
listening who might not know who you mean by Honda, it's not the car company. It's Kaisuke Honda, who top
yeah,
Japanese player, played for AC Milan, massive clubs, and was still playing professionally. It was brought in as
still playing. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, and it was brought in as
still,
manager of the Cambodian national team, and was involved in coaching and ownership of some clubs, which is that's a lot for him to manage. I don't want to be his personal assistant, but yeah, just to share. So that was definitely putting Cambodia on the map a little bit more within Asia, drawing some more eyes, right? Even within the
yeah,
country, and definitely a big signing. I would say if I compared to something in the MLS in the United States, would be like a David Beckham signing was in the early 2000s.
exactly
It
that.
really
Yeah,
drew some eyeballs.
yeah. I mean, listen, I used to sign this guy on Football Manager. Do you know what I mean? Like, he was,
Right.
as a player, he's an icon. As a coach, I could not say a good word. I genuinely have no, and as a player, I have nothing but respect for the man and what he's achieved. As a coach, I do not have a good word to say about him. But the federation, it was like I said, a piece of marketing genius. And listen, Southeast Asia Games earlier this year, all eyes were on Cambodia, and the football team got a lot of support. And I was at some of the games, and stadiums were filled, and it was, again, I get goosebumps sort of thinking about it, because it was just an incredible experience. So
Mm.
football has grown massively in that sense. Like, it is becoming more and more popular. It's becoming more mainstream here. But in terms of where it is as compared to the rest of the world, it's still so far behind. Um, it's still a blank slate almost. I know you've spoken to sort of other people in the country, like, and we all feel that. It feels like it's England in sort of 92, 93, where the Premier League was just coming in. So there's people ready to invest money. There's people sort of waiting to see what's going to happen, and it could still just go any way that it wants to go. It is a blank slate. It just needs somebody to come in and do it. It feels like at the moment everyone's hedging their bets. Do we
Mm.
invest in the youth development side? Do we go provincial? The lower leagues be provincial based, and then it funnels up. You know, we're we're 8 games into the season, and I still don't know if there's relegation or promotion. They're talking about promotion on the
Mm.
rule book. There's promotion, but we all know, everybody within the game knows, that the two teams that would get relegated and the two teams that get promoted are so far apart in terms of organizational structure that there's just no way the CPL could allow it, because the two teams coming up just aren't ready.
Mm.
There's three teams in our division that are B teams of Premier League teams as well, so they can't get promoted either. So in that sense, like, it's still just this uncertainty of what it's going to be. There's essentially 14 professional football clubs, one us being one of them, and we're still not at that status yet. We're still transitioning from NGO, not for profit kind of
Right.
community based organization to professional football club. Like, we're making that jump now and that transition, and we've had a lot of sort of stop start um, experiences, but including us, and then there's the national academy. Like, there's 15 clubs, and that's it. Underneath that, everything else is provincially based, and so the uncertainty of what's going to happen makes it very, very difficult for any of us to kind of operate. Not knowing if you're going to get promoted or relegated.
Sure.
My biggest argument, my biggest argument would be, at this point, I keep sort of saying, why do we keep playing? It's like, why are we spending money every single week on football matches where it's barely being promoted, and what's the end goal here? we're not chasing promotion. We're not going to get relegated. We're just spending money every single week on football matches that don't matter apparently. And that's the thing. Like if it was a community football match that was bringing people together and we were just all playing for fun, brilliant, spend the money.
Right.
But this is professional football with no end goal. Like,
Yes,
and
it sounds like
that for
it's
me.
really sounds like we're in the kind of the teenage years almost of like kind of are figuring ourselves out, but then there's still a lot under the surface that's like
Yeah,
not certain and it's unsure um, but I'm curious. Obviously, a big piece of you as the club going from a grassroots model, just youth to professional, is a financial piece, right? That in the
yeah,
definition of being professional is a financial aspect within Cambodia in general. We talked about having a new company coming in leader, like where is the money coming from within the league? Is there like ticket sales and much match gates? Is there does money get passed down from the FA? Is there like a TV deal where certain clubs are splitting it up? Does it rely just on the board of each club and the owners and hopefully you have either an institutional owner like a military branch or police or something like that, or you have like an entrepreneur or a businessman, like where is the money kind of coming from that allows the kind of the whole machine to keep going?
all of the above, basically. Like again, this is where there seems to be sort of no real organization of it. It's the only thing that is adamant is that you can't promote gambling companies. So they're the companies that want to spend money on this stuff, and we're not allowed to use them. So I mean, obviously, we all that's a conversation for another podcast in terms of is gambling good for football. We all have our own thoughts, but essentially, so most clubs in the country have a multi-millionaire owner. So the top three or four clubs in the country, one owns a communications company, one owns a media company, and one owns a, a real estate company, and they're multi-millionaires, big families, and they have lots of money, and this is basically a toy for them. Like it's a business, but they're not they're not putting the money in. They don't get any of their money back. Essentially,
Right.
if they invest
Right.
$100,000 in players, they're not going to sell that player for anything. Like most transfers and things like that are done for free. There might be some small amounts of money being passed around backwards and forwards, um, that aren't made public, but essentially transfers are all for free, so you're not making their money back. These are, it's basically an ego thing for most of the owners. Um, you do get support from the federation, and I mean, I can only speak from my experiences in sort of our level at League Two. We do get support. Unfortunately, the money's doesn't even cover the cost of running one game. So every game you're kind of losing money. And the only way to sort of really attract the fans is you can't really charge them. You can't charge them money. Like we have a price. We have a ticket price of it's $1.25 for adults, and then from 17 under, it's free. And we're still only going to get, 3, 4, 500 people at a game. We've got, a Siem Reap derby in 2 weeks' time. And, we're actively going to we're promoting that we want to break the crowd record for our stadium, which is, currently sort of like 3,500. So we're going to give away 10,000 tickets to kids and try to sort of generate a bit of fun and a bit of atmosphere. But we're going to be giving those tickets away. We might, if we got 5,000 that day and we broke the record, we're probably going to make $1,000. And that again barely covers the cost of the game. So, my wife constantly asks me, "Why are we doing this? Why are you doing this? It costs us money every single week. It's costing you money, and why are you doing it?" And again, I don't really have an answer for her at this point, like because it's just you're just throwing money away. So anyone that's investing money in the game here at this moment, is doing it because they love the game or they're attached to a story.
Mm.
And our story coming from not for profit, going into professional football, but all of our kids are from, are from NGOs, and we have a very unique story, which is a good thing. Um, but yeah, anyone investing money is really doing it because they love the game, or they see the potential that I see, where it is a blank slate, and this could be anything that you want it to be. And if they're smart and they understand, if they're smart people and they understand football and the football industry, Cambodia is an amazing investment. But it's going to take time. It's going to take
Mm-hmm.
2, 3, 4, 5 years for you to see a return on that investment. But if you did it now, you're going to get everything very, very cheap, and you just got to be patient with it. Unfortunately, not everyone is patient with their investments. And I suppose, obviously, again, with things like COVID and things like this, the uncertainty of the next 2 or 3 years, especially with all that's going on politically as well, like everybody's kind of like, where are we going to be in 2 years' time? What's the world going to look like in 2 years' time, let alone what the football industry will look like? So right now, that's where Cambodia is about to explode in terms of football, but probably could not have timed it any worse. Where everyone's kind of hedging their bets and everyone's a little bit sort of weary about what the next 2 or 3 years will look like. So no one's really willing to put that money into something that might not exist in 3 years' time.
And speaking of patience, when we talk about the people within the football industry who can be the least patient, it's the players, right? So they're the ones who have got the biological clock, or they have injuries, or they've got to really just make it work day to day with their abilities and skills. Could you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about what is it like to be a player in the first or second division within Cambodia? Like, what does that day to day look like? What are some of the challenges that might be unique to a player in Cambodia versus some other parts of the world?
I mean, the biggest challenge is that they're not professional. It's not a professional standard in that sense. Like, compared to professional leagues around the world, it just isn't. So I've always there's two ways of looking at it. Like, I'm always with the players in terms of, if they're not being paid like professional players and treated like professional players, and they don't have the environment of professional
Mm-hmm.
football players, then how can you expect them to act like that? But then I come from the other side of it of, they're being paid to play football, like small amount of money or whatever. Like, I was paid to play semi-professional back in the UK, and it wasn't enough money to live off, but I was still at training every single day that I needed to be. I still turned up every single weekend and gave everything I could. And it still meant a lot when we won. It still hurt when we lost. I still lived and breathed football. They don't do that here. They don't do that. And, you know, defeats don't hurt as much as they should. And I think that
Why do you think that is?
most
Why do you think maybe they don't get that? Do you think it part of it is being professional? You were saying earlier, like the difference of coaching the youth game, like kids really do just put everything they have into it, whereas an adult you might have different thoughts about things. Why do you think the defeats don't really hurt, and they don't kind of seize that full feeling of the potential of being a professional?
again, culturally, I mean, England's always the anomaly in this because we grow up with football. Like, you've got no choice in England. Even if you hate the game, you know about it. You know what's happening because it's everywhere. So it's part of your culture. Again, I sort of draw back with COVID. The only thing anyone cared about was getting football back on TV, or getting football players playing, because it means so much. Here, if football stopped today, day-to-day life wouldn't change for anyone. You know what I mean? Like, if they said football is banned, you cannot play it anymore, their life wouldn't change. It's just 2 hours of their afternoon that they get to do something different now. And that's it. And that's kind of how it feels. Again, there are exceptions to it. You've got the top clubs in the top three clubs in the country, Crown, Visaka, and Spiraean. These three clubs, Wunket as well. I probably put them there as well. Those four clubs are professionally run football clubs. They've got financial backers. Their players are being paid a good salary, a salary they can live off. So for them, every day they're in the gym, sports science, and they have everything they need. Below that is just trying to keep up and things like that. So, but yeah, like I said, if football stopped tomorrow, everybody's day to day life would just carry on as normal. And for my wife, it'd
So
be
then
less stressful.
I'm curious then, because you're saying that where it wouldn't really change the day to day and the culture and the society of Cambodia, which, like you're saying, England's pretty unique, and you could list maybe 10 other countries that might really be in that same boat if we really got to it. But then you're also saying that it's a massive opportunity and there's so much potential within the country right now. So those seem like pretty polar statements. Like where do
Exactly.
you kind of find that? Where do you kind of see, yeah, the potential is there, but right now it's not really, obviously potential is potential. It's not certain, it's not now, it's not present. But what would you say to someone who might hear that and knows nothing about the situation within Cambodia that would kind of make that relate?
I think it's for me. You're going to be brave. You've got to be somebody that's willing to take risks. Like if you're looking at football in Cambodia as an investment, you know, it's it it's on the cusp of becoming part of the mainstream culture. It is popular. The marketing that was done by CPL. CPL is now one of the most recognized logos within Cambodia. Everybody knows who CPL are. But they don't quite. There's no like tribal supporter like fans. Like you don't.
Right.
You just football's on. Okay, there's a football match. Oh, there's a team from Phnom Penh playing a team from Siem Reap. Well, I'm from Siem Reap, so I'll support them today. And you might go along with your friends, and obviously, like you do have some icons. Like there's a lad at Spiraean called Nick Taylor, who's just the most handsome boy you're ever going to
Yeah.
meet. And
Yeah.
every single
Cambodian American guy. Yeah, I've seen.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. That's
he's in
right.
all
So
the ads,
everybody
and
knows.
I follow him on
Yeah,
Instagram. He's got all the
exactly. So
sponsors.
if he comes to Siem Reap, there's a big crowd going to that game. It's all just to get a picture of him. That's fine. I mean, that's what idols are. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's an incredible thing, but it's just not enough of that. And so you don't have that kind of feeling. And again, like I said, the result of that football match doesn't matter. The people that have gone to that football, a lot of the people that have gone to that football match is not because Angkor City are playing Spiraean, and no one cares about the end result apart from the people on the pitch. The fans, all they really care about is getting that picture with their idol.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so be it. Like so be it. Like so the popularity is there, and people want to watch it, but I guess what I'm alluding to is no one. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Like I said to you, I think earlier, like Tottenham lose, it matters to me. It hurts. My inbox is flooded with Facebook posts I'm being tagged in. It's a nightmare. But that doesn't really happen here. It doesn't happen
Yeah.
here, and that's what that's I guess where I'm kind of. That's where it is. Like the difference would be, win or lose, who's playing who doesn't really matter here. But the game is popular, so there
Mm-hmm.
is a potential gold mine here. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't happen, it's not gonna affect the day to day life of the
Sure.
standard Cambodian.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing then is it's gaining like prominence and relevance, cultural relevance in its own way,
Yeah,
just for different reasons, maybe, right?
yeah,
And I think that's because you're looking at a situation where, all right, what's driving this? And I'm sure there will be trickle down effects, but a lot of it is like a top down kind of like an American model of franchises, right? And
yeah,
they're setting the vision of the league, and then maybe we'll figure out the lower leagues and grassroots and speaking to other people within Cambodian football, a clear youth pathway is not really present either, right? Like there's so much opportunity and potential
Don't
just
get me
within
started.
actually developing more youth players, right? So it seems like just a different way that's going to become the be. Whereas, so it's not necessarily fair to compare it to an England, to an Italy, to a Spain, where you have hundreds of years. We're in the fourth, fifth, sixth generation of
Yeah.
cultural significance and impact on people's lives. And so it's just going to be different. So I think in that sense, you're kind of on that in the vanguard, right? You're at the forefront of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, you hit the nail on the head. It's like for me, there is no long term vision. It feels like every year, every 18 months, we're presented with a new plan for another 5 year vision that you just know is never going to come to fruition. Like the one that is done, the only one that I've seen executed was the build up to the Southeast Asia Games. Now, the country did an amazing job, an amazing job. Like I watched the opening ceremony, like crying, almost like it was just amazing. And but there was a clear plan. We hired Honda. We wanted to improve the image of the game in Cambodia, and in the Southeast Asia Games, we were going to have every stadium full, and football we were going to excel in. Now we didn't excel in football, but every stadium was full, and but it was a clear vision and a clear idea, and we followed it. Since then, like what's next? What are we doing next? Like the women's game is the big example. I cannot imagine how they've screwed it up. Like because the women's game during the Southeast Asia Games was so popular. The girls got to the semi-finals that everyone was raving about it. Girls haven't trained since.
Hmm.
There's been no women's league for 18 months. We've got a women's team training, every single week, waiting to find out about when it's going to happen, and it hasn't. It just hasn't. And but why? Why has it not happened? Why is it not being developed? And again, the youth system, like there's talks of, every province has a youth system, and does it? Like on paper we do, but I don't see it. I've never seen it. And if there is one, it's just not being executed correctly. And I don't want to be too negative about, like, because I know the federation have got good ideas, and they are restricted in terms of sort of funding, and culturally and logistically, it's not always easy in Cambodia to sort of be traveling all over the country. It's getting better, but
Mhm.
obviously, logistically, there's challenges, and there's not enough referees to run every single game. There's not enough pitches or good quality, and raining season kills you, and it's too hot during certain seasons, and it has more national holidays than any other country in the world. Like so, it's not easy what they've got to do. But essentially, it just feels like every 18 months we're bored of a plan because it's not quite getting enough success. So let's change it. And that for me would be just where it really, really struggles, is there's just no clear vision of what's our end
Hmm.
goal. If they said, look, we're going to invest in the next generation of football players within this country, and they put all this money into the youth system, they could ask clubs, put the onus on clubs. Clubs should be, developing coaches and referees, make it part of their licensing structure. Every club is responsible for developing 10 referees a year, or 10 coaches at B level, or put it on us, but help us with the funding to do that. They don't have to do everything. We've got clubs that can attract,
Sure.
but help us funding wise, and we can do that for you. But there's just such a disconnect between all the clubs and the federation and CPL, and yeah, it just, that, like I said, there's no clear structural vision, and no leader essentially to make sure that vision's being implemented.
Yeah, and you talk about vision at the country level and the federation level.
Yeah,
very complex, right? And it's going to take some time. It sounds like, it might really depend on the people there to kind of figure that out. But at least for you and with Angkor City FC, like what is the vision of the club? Because I know that yes, now you are fully professional, but you still kind of maintain that ethos of the community and of developing people and not just footballers. So could you share a little bit about what kind of makes the club unique, and kind of like what your overall mission is within your operations?
I mean, what makes us unique is our end goal is not to win titles. You know, I mean, listen, I like to win. Of course, I want to win. And if it's a byproduct of what we do, then great. I want to be promoted to the CPR. I want us to be playing better teams every week because obviously the better teams that we're playing, the quicker we can develop what we want to develop. But you know, sticking with that kind of what we talked about earlier, and football is this amazing game that can transform lives. And at the end of the day, the average salary for a professional player here is $280 a month. And by the time they're 30, they're not playing anymore. They've not earned enough money to survive. So they've got to, at our club, we want to be able to give the opportunity for people to live their dream of playing professional football, but we're also trying to prepare them off the field for a life after it. So, most of our players are involved in training programs where, they're learning their coaching badges, they're learning about refereeing, they're learning about sports media, everything that is needed to run a football club, they have to do sort of hours within that area of the football club as part of their contract. And hopefully, obviously long term for us, what we're hoping is that the club kind of just sustains itself in terms of staff and things like this. But we also give these young people the tools to walk away from this game and not end up sort of working at their father-in-law's shop selling things on the side of the road. Like, again, there's no disrespect to anybody that does that, like,
Right. We
whatever
want to
it
give
is,
them
but
more options, right? Like more
yeah.
opportunities to develop within something they obviously have a passion in that they love, that maybe there is growth within that too within
Yeah,
Cambodia as it comes forward.
I mean, culturally as well here, like, I mean, culturally here, I've been here 11 years, and I'm known by a lot of people in terms of the football world. But and when I talk, my players listen. They, of course, they do. Like, they do. But when my partner Sapol talks, they're drawn in. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I know even myself, like, I could listen to people coach all day or talk, but someone that's been there and done it is talking, you're drawn in, right? Like Gary Neville, like, he gets a lot of bad rep, but like when he like his podcast every Sunday, I'm drawn in. Like, that 30 minutes, I'm just like, whoo. And I don't
Yeah,
always
he's been
agree,
there and done
but
it.
I'm
Yeah.
drawn in because he's been there and done it. He's been there and done it. And Roy Keane, like, everyone loves Roy Keane as a pundit because you're amazed by that's the level. That's the level of a top midfield player in the world. Um, so, like, again, sort of trying to implement that in Cambodia, I just think it means culturally Khmer's love Khmer's, and if you can elevate a Khmer to a level where they've been there and done it, you know, younger players and they're going to listen to them more than they're going to listen to me because I'm just a Westerner. I'm just a Westerner that's come here and I'm trying to tell them how to do things, and that's fine. But essentially, they, Khmer's want to help Khmer's. They want to help. They want to see Khmer successful, and for that to happen, we need to be developing Khmer's that have been there and done it. That
Yeah.
have that
Yeah, exactly.
have
And
that
you're
knowledge,
you're
that knowledge base.
it strikes me almost like vocational, right? Like work placement, like work study type of thing where you're kind of learning on the job. And then like you say, the club can
Yeah,
sustain itself with now, they're gaining quality and efficacy, so then they're able to elevate, the club as well. But right
yeah.
now it's still early on, and I know that you as the owner kind of are wearing a lot of hats there. So what does like a typical day look like for you as owner and head coach? Like what would you say a typical day is?
I mean, there is no typical day when you're doing sort of 5 or 6 different jobs within the football club. Like every day is a challenge and every day is different. But obviously, I think most of my mornings are spent putting out fires, really, like trying to sort of find people that want to help us support the football club, um, trying to get coaches ready and trying to get game prep, social media ready because we've got to have team news out and we want to try and do interviews and we want to try to make sure that the image of the football club is always professional. Um, but then I've also got to try and prep training sessions because I want to make sure that my training sessions are great. And that one of the biggest challenges for me over the last sort of 6 months is I've never really been able to. I've not completed 1 week of training yet, like because I always have to. I'll always be saying, Paul, I've got a meeting at 1 o'clock. Like I need to do it, or this happens, and that's where we are. It's a difficult situation for the players as well because there's 3 sessions they've got me, and then there's 1 session I'm not there, and they don't know why I'm not there, and it's very sort of turbulent. Is the best word for it. And again, it's hard for me. It's hard for me to accept that, like because I know that I'm responsible for it, and I know that I haven't delivered my best coaching, but I'm kind of doing a good job at everything rather than being where I can be at one thing. Do you know what I mean? So like spreading yourself so thinly and just doing enough in all the areas means that no area of the club is really on fire. We're just surviving. And that's because, myself, I'm spread too thin in that sense. But again, when there's no budget to hire people, because we don't have that millionaire owner. I'm the owner. Right? I'm the owner apparently. And that's it. So we're living off sort of money from the federation, what money I can hide from my wife. And like that's it. And like I've got my dad will send money sometimes, and we've got good partners who are can help to a certain extent, but again, it's because they love the game or they have a personal relationship with myself rather than they're doing it as an investment thing. So that's that's been tough. That's the toughest part that we kind of had. But I've just hired a new director of football, a guy called Richard Harkus, who's just a breath of fresh air. Basically, he's come into the football club. Very tough guy. But what's been great about him for us is he's not connected to me or anyone at the club before this. It's a purely because before this, basically anyone that's come in, even our board members, they've got a personal relationship with me. We've met at a bar, or we've met, on holiday, or they know someone that knows me, and there's a connection. This guy has no connection. He's just a football guy who's good at what he does and has come into a role where he's like, right, this isn't a professional football club. Like this is what we need to do here, 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 and here, and it's going to get done. And there's no qualms about disciplining people. There's no qualms about saying, hey, look, that's not good enough. Like, whereas with me, my biggest weakness as a boss or as a leader is like the discipline side of things has always been a weakness. I just, I like people happy. I believe like if you're happy and loving what you do, then you're going to be the best at it. But you can't exist in business. You can't be successful as a football coach or in business if you don't have levels of discipline. But for me, it was always difficult disciplining people that A, I had a relationship with, a personal relationship with, but B, also they were doing it out of the goodness of their heart because one month they were getting paid, the next month they weren't, but they didn't complain. They were still there. They might not have done as many hours, but they were still there. And then next month they might have got half salary, and but they've never held it against me. You know, they've always understood and they've always still turned up. Um, and that for me is it's then difficult for me to sort of be like, hey, why haven't you done that? Like, get that done. Whereas this guy is coming in now, Richard's coming in and going, hey, nah, that doesn't work. You know, like that's you've got to. So he's the bad guy basically. He's coming in as, and he's a lovely guy. That's the thing. That's the problem. Is that he's a really nice guy, but he's coming in as the bad guy now, which is nice because
Well,
then I can
and
sort of take a step back.
yeah, well, it allows you, yeah, to one step back from like it being in the director role or director of football role, but also, one thing we'd spoken about on our initial conversations, like it's hard for you to be the owner and the one who's financially responsible for everything, and then also being the head coach responsible for all the on-field operations too, right? And like those
Yeah,
are different roles. They should be different people, ideally, right? You can see why it's
it has
set
to
up
be.
and structured like that. So,
It has
so
to
it,
be. Yeah.
like you're saying, it's really hard to have. You can have multiple layers of professional relationships with the same person, then, and that's got to be really, really difficult to challenge. Plus, being in a different culture as well, and trying to adapt to that. And you're saying like, hey, you are ultimately a guest, and it's really, at the end of the day, you're running the club, but it's a larger culture and country, around it that you're adapting to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, on the Friday, I'm telling the players that we're waiting on this money. I can't pay you. So they're disappointed. And then on Saturday, I'm in front of them saying, right, come on, lads, let's get up for it. Like, it doesn't work. Like, I've just lost too much of the dressing room at that point. Because I'm the guy that's pissing them off the day before. Sorry for the language, but I'm the guy
Mm-hmm.
that's,
Mm-hmm.
killing them the day
100%.
before by
Yeah.
not being able to pay them. So I can't therefore then stand in front of them and say, come on, give me everything. They're like, you can't even pay me my salary. So why would I give you? But now, now that we've, the dynamics are changing. I can sort of be back in that dressing room with them now and be like, right, okay, lads, I can go to the board now. I can go to Richard now and be like, hey, I'll go to Richard. I'll make sure I'll do everything I can to get your salary. I'm with you. And then it can become me with them and I'm doing everything for them to try and
Yeah.
get everything I can rather than me being the guy that lets them down, but also just doing everything I can to get them what they want. Because essentially I'm the guy that's doing everything I can, but failing, and
Sure.
then asking them to come with me and do battle for 90 minutes just doesn't really work. And I mean, that's exactly why we are where we are in terms of results on the football field. You can see it. Most people will look at our squad and look at our team and be like, "Oh, they must be pretty bad." This is not a bad. This is not a bad group of football players. They're really not. Like, um, you know, 2 months ago, 2 months ago, I would be saying that the group that we have could could get promoted with this group, without a doubt. Our league, there's not much difference between any of the sides, but it's it's the environment and the
The
surrounding
morale, right? And
factors.
then the chemistry and
Yeah,
those
of course.
those challenges of the day to day of like impacting then, okay, now they're saying not sure if they're getting their salary or not, that can affect you, right? And
Of
sure
course
they
it
can
does.
say they're
Yeah. I mean,
playing for the opportunity to be scouted and seen by other clubs, but it's still like, what are you,
yeah.
what are you doing for
And
me
then,
today?
yeah, it's it. And most of them are young. Most of them are young lads as well. Like we've prided ourselves on always having sort of a young team. So I mean, imagine being 20 years old. You're a professional football player, but you can't afford to take a girl out on a date. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you can't afford it because
You just invite her
it's
to the game.
embarrassing. Do you
That's
know?
what you got to
Yeah,
do.
yeah. You invite her to the
Invite her to
game
the
where you
match,
get
bring some money
destroyed.
in for the
Yeah, but you get destroyed. And like, I mean, it's not. Do you know what I mean? You don't
yeah.
feel confident, do you? Like, you're not a confident guy then, are you? Like, you just like no money in your pocket, you can't do anything, but you're apparently you're an idol. It doesn't work. Again, like, it's just they don't feel like professional football players. So um, yeah, it's embarrassing, and it's also culturally a big thing in terms of you know saving face and pride, and these are big words in Cambodia. Like, you want to the image of who you are is very, very important, and money is a part of that. And if you've got none in your pocket, then it's hard for you to sort of really exert yourself as a professional, you know?
Absolutely. And yeah, and so you're, going day to day wearing all the different hats trying to figure things out. And I know it's been a challenge for you as an individual and as a club and as a family, like stepping up to that level. But what do you kind of see as the vision for the club, like a year out from now, 3 years, 5 years of, once there's some stability and things, like what is the vision that you have for Anchor City FC?
Yeah, I mean, this season, again, because of the uncertainty of what's going to happen next year, we've kind of we've put this season as just improve. Like it's game by game, but it's starting to put the foundations in place, like that, the discipline structure in place, the way that we want to operate, because everything up until now has just been, okay, we've got a game, and everyone's like, all right, no one really knows what their job is. Most people are doing two or three jobs. Some of our players are also helping with the fitness side or coaching, and so it's putting those procedures in place, those essential procedures that need to happen. So on game day, we know where we're going for lunch, what time we meet, what we wear, make sure that there's enough of what we wear for everybody to be wearing it. And these things are just not questions; they're just done. It's routine. And the same with training. We train at this place at this time every day. This many bottles of water have got to be ordered, and this needs to be there at this time. And again, it's not a thing that you ever have to think about. It just happens every day. Whereas right now, there's 100 things that need to be decided every single day. Like even right now, I'm looking at the time like, right, I haven't sent the morning message to the players yet about what time training is today. So like, I start to panic a little bit, and I can see messages coming in now, like, "What time's training today?" This is a thing that no other head coach has to worry about. Like, you don't worry about that stuff because it just becomes routine. So this year is just all about getting that now in place,
Hmm.
and then obviously next year, if everything stayed the same, then next year it would be about getting promotion to the top league, which is where we want to be. Beyond that, obviously, on the field, we always want to be competitive. But again, I feel like for us, it has to be the core of what we are and who we are is is the community side of things, and it's about, like I said, developing people rather than the players. So,
Hmm.
we're maybe 2 or 3 years away from it, but in 3 years' time, I want to see us taking some of the players that we have now and either A, moving them on to clubs elsewhere around the world, um, or moving them to different areas within the club. So a professional player that's, hit their peak, that then becomes a coach of our under 15s or becomes a
Yes.
head coach of our
Yes.
women's team, where we can really have that proof of concept where players that have played professionally, that have been there and done it, then move or graduate to a different area within the game, but use their life experiences to improve that area of the game. That makes sense. So, um, yeah. So for me personally, and I think for the club, is being able to prove that concept of learning on the job, and having examples of that, being in the Premier League, um, but also always been a passion is to have one or two that have gone on to bigger and better things, but elsewhere in the world.
Hmm. Absolutely. And seeing the product of the work you're doing on the youth development side of, becoming bigger and sending them forward and doing it for then you make the impact on the country as well. You talked about idols earlier.
Yeah,
You're now creating examples of that. And so we certainly wish you well in that journey, in the present and the future going forward. Um, as we look to wrap up this episode, Charlie, and we appreciate all your openness and sharing and your honesty of like the benefits, and the challenges. I think we didn't get too deep into some of like the joys and benefits, but I think they're pretty self-evident, right? Just the
yeah,
adventure itself, right? Being in this this situation where you can impact people, where you're part of the game growing within Cambodia, where you're a part of helping to develop the players within your club as footballers on the pitch, but also just as people, and just like all of the various threads, that you're kind of weaving here is just really amazing. And I think that's what makes Angkor City really unique, and something to pay attention to and to watch. And we'll certainly be adding all of your links for LinkedIn and all social media and things, so that
I
all our
appreciate that.
listeners
Yeah.
and viewers can be fans and support from abroad. And when they want to go visit one of the wonders of the world at Angkor Wat, they'll catch a match as well. And maybe one day
Yeah.
the club will be that wonder of the world, and the temples will be a sideshow. But
Yeah. Well,
that's quite a
hope
vision.
so.
That's quite a vision. But
Yeah. I
but
mean,
yeah.
if we're
So
if
so I
we're
would
bringing in as much money as they are, that'd be great.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And so the way that we wrap up each episode of our podcast is just, if you could please finish the sentence, because football dot dot dot.
Because football. Um, because football. Oh, you caught me on the spot there. It's very rare. Because football is a beautiful game. Remember, oh, that's a bad one. Don't know where I'm going with that.
We can chop that up
Right,
in the post
yeah,
production
yeah,
too.
yeah. That goes. Please don't put that in. Because football has influenced my life, I want to be able to use it to influence others. Yeah, I'll stick with that for now. Yeah, I'll go with
I
that.
love that. I love that. Yeah, I can definitely identify with that, and resonates with me. And I think was part of my reason for starting the podcast and becoming a coach myself, and just the entire journey that it's taken me on. I don't really know too much else where I can kind of find myself and connect with other people in that way. And so yeah, I would definitely say that resonates with me as well. Another great answer, and a unique one, that we've had so far. So, but yes, Charlie, thank you again so much for taking the time, and we'll let you get back to the day to day now of running the club, and running the team, and you got to let the players know when to show up for training.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And listen, it's important what you're doing, because, and I thank you, because like there's so many great stories in football that don't get told. And for people like yourself to be out there trying to highlight them, it's an amazing thing. And I think as a community, like, football can be very, very disconnected in that sense. Like, there's not enough of people helping people within this game,
Mm.
especially on this side of the world. So, for people like yourself who are doing what you're doing, it's much appreciated, and you're doing a great job. So, thank you so much, and it was a pleasure to be part of it.
Absolutely, no pleasure, and I'm sure we'll follow up again at some point in the future, online, or maybe in
Hopefully, mate.
person at some point, and would love to stay connected, and just continue to
Yeah,
watch the growth of the club. So we wish you the best with that, and thank you again for sharing your story and that of Angkor City FC. And yeah, have a
appreciate it.
great rest of your day, and everyone else watching, listening, wherever you are. Thank you so much. Please follow along with Charlie's story and that of the club, and give them your support. And we'll see you on the next episode.
See you soon.
Cheers. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers, man. Bye bye.